Have you ever lost control, made a choice you regret, or been outmaneuvered by someone calmer, colder, and sharper than you? What if I told you that the greatest power you can wield is not through strength or charm, but through absolute mental dominance? By mastering the one thing everyone else cannot, their own emotions, in a world where decisions are often clouded by anger, desire, or fear, men fail, not because they lack skill, but because they surrender to the very feelings that should serve them. Today, we unveil a timeless truth from Machiavelli. Emotion is a trap, and the mind that conquers emotion conquers all. In the world of power, there exists a silent enemy, one that lurks within the human heart and whispers seductively, urging rash decisions, impulsive actions, and fatal mistakes. This enemy is emotion. Anger, fear, desire, hope. All these are chains, invisible yet unbreakable, that bind even the strongest of men. The untrained mind believes itself to be free, yet every man who surrenders to his feelings becomes predictable, exposed, and vulnerable. To act under the command of passion is to invite failure, for emotion clouds judgment, blinding even the keenest intellect to the realities before it. Consider anger, for instance. A man consumed by rage believes he acts with justice or strength, yet in truth, he acts like a puppet, his strings pulled by the heat of his own blood. He sees enemies in every shadow, betrayal in every word, and thus strikes where he should observe, punishes where he should plan, and exposes his weaknesses where discretion would have preserved them. The world is filled with such men who mistake fury for courage, and in their storm of feelings they fall one after another to those who remain calm, calculating, and ever aware. Fear is no less treacherous. A fearful mind interprets events not as they are, but as the worst possible version of itself. Fear forces hesitation, it breeds paranoia, and it can paralyze action at the very moment when decisiveness is most required. A ruler who acts out of fear of rebellion becomes tyrannical, alienating allies and strengthening foes. A general who fears the enemy may delay or retreat unnecessarily, losing the initiative that is often the only path to victory. Fear is a shadow that magnifies every danger, and yet the wise man learns to see through it, to recognize it not as a guide, but as a signal to act with reason, to let strategy, not trembling, dictate his steps. Desire, too, is a cunning foe. Men chase wealth, power, love, or prestige, believing that these things alone will secure their happiness or dominance. Yet in this pursuit, they sacrifice caution, integrity, and foresight. Desire blinds them to the subtleties of human behavior, the hidden traps laid by rivals, the calculations of those who wait patiently for them to overreach. A man ruled by desire is like a moth drawn to flame. He cannot resist, and in his longing, he consumes himself. Machiavelli would advise that desire is not to be eradicated, for it is natural, but it must be observed, measured, and held in check. Only when the mind controls desire can one act with clarity and ensure that every action serves a purpose, rather than a fleeting passion. Even hope and compassion, qualities celebrated as virtues, can betray the unwary. A ruler who trusts too easily, who allows his heart to sway in moments of mercy or optimism, may be deceived. A general who hopes that enemies will act honorably may walk into a trap, misreading the intentions of those around him. Machiavelli teaches that the world is not ruled by ideals, but by calculation, observation, and the ruthless understanding of human nature. To allow hope or sympathy to dictate choices is to relinquish control, to surrender mental ground to those who think without sentiment. Observe the examples of history, those who acted out of indignation, who allowed anger to dictate policy, often met sudden and violent ends. Those who feared loss, or the whims of the crowd, lost kingdoms they might have preserved through calm calculation. Those who chased pleasure or power with uncontrolled desire fell prey to enemies who bided their time. Every emotional impulse carries with it a cost, and the greater the passion, the more ruinous the mistake. The world does not reward feeling, It rewards perception, patience, and precision. To achieve dominance over men, one must first dominate oneself. A mind clouded by emotion cannot see opportunities, it cannot anticipate threats, it cannot manipulate events with the subtlety that power demands. The wise man observes, calculates, and acts with detachment. He experiences anger, fear, and desire, but he does not obey them. He uses them as tools to understand others, to anticipate their actions, and to gain advantage rather than as chains that bind his own decisions. Machiavelli understood that the greatest victories are not won on the battlefield alone, but within the recesses of the mind. To conquer oneself is to hold the world in one's hands, for the indecisive, the passionate, and the impulsive are forever at the mercy of circumstance and of those who remain unshaken. The men who rule effectively, who wield influence without faltering, are those who see clearly through the veil of emotion. They recognize the tricks of the heart, the misguiding force of unexamined feelings, and they act from reason, even in moments of crisis. When anger would rise or fear would grip, they maintain clarity. Others will lash out, hesitate, or flounder, but the emotionally disciplined move forward, turning opportunity into advantage and chaos into mastery. In personal and political life alike, emotion is a constant adversary. It tempts, misleads, and ensnares. Yet for those willing to observe and to master it, emotion can become a guide, a subtle signal of human weakness around them, rather than a distortion of their own judgment. The path to power, Machiavelli insists, is not found through passion, nor through idealism, nor through virtue alone. It is found through the clarity of mind, the control of impulses, and the recognition that emotion, if unchecked, is a trap, one from which few escape and even fewer conquer. True power, as Machiavelli understood, does not spring from strength alone, nor from armies, nor from wealth. It emerges from the mastery of oneself, from the ability to remain unmoved while the world rages around you. To act without detachment is to surrender to circumstance, to allow the whims of emotion to dictate your fate. But detachment, carefully cultivated, transforms the mind into a weapon, a lens through which every action of others can be observed, anticipated, and exploited. It is the cornerstone of mental dominance, the secret that separates the ruler from the ruled, the victor from the vanquished. Detachment is often mistaken for coldness, for the absence of feeling. Yet this is a grave misunderstanding. Machiavelli does not call for the heart to be extinguished, but for the heart to be disciplined, for emotions to be observed rather than obeyed. A man who acts from anger, from lust, or from unchecked fear is like a soldier charging blindly into battle, unaware of traps, ambushes, and the subtle positions of his enemies. But the detached man, the one who has mastered himself, moves through the world like a shadow, silent and precise, seeing the missteps of others while remaining invisible in his own intent. Consider the ways in which detachment manifests as power. A ruler who makes decisions without immediate emotional reaction is feared and respected. He does not rush to punish nor hasten to reward based on whim. His subjects, his allies, and even his adversaries never know where he stands, what he feels, or what he will do next. This ambiguity is strength. The mind that does not betray itself becomes unassailable, its decisions immune to the manipulation of others. People may scheme and plot, hoping to provoke, to entice, to sway, but the detached observer remains untouched, calculating each move, each response, and each opportunity with unwavering clarity. Detachment allows for patience, where others falter. In the world of power, haste is the enemy of precision. Men acting on impulse act as though every moment is final, every decision irreversible. But the one who remains detached watches, waits, and understands that the currents of human behavior are predictable when observed without passion. To wait is not weakness, it is strategy. To withhold judgment is not cowardice, it is foresight. The detached mind gains insight into the desires, fears, and weaknesses of all it encounters, converting knowledge into influence and influence into dominance. This mastery of detachment is not limited to public life or politics. It extends into personal interactions, into every situation where minds and wills clash. The detached man listens without bias, he observes without judgment, he calculates without emotional distortion. He knows that trust is often a weapon, that loyalty is frequently conditional, and that sentiment can be manipulated. By refusing to act out of impulse, he ensures that every word, every gesture, and every decision serves his long-term purpose, rather than the fleeting cravings of the heart. Machiavelli recognized that those who allow themselves to be swayed by affection, pity, or fleeting admiration lose their advantage, becoming pawns to the schemes of those less compassionate but more disciplined. Detachment is also the armor that shields a mind from betrayal and deceit. Those who are emotionally entangled are easy prey for manipulation. A lover's plea, a friend's tear, or a subordinate's obsequious flattery can all be exploited by others who recognize the weakness in yielding to emotion. But when one has cultivated detachment, these attempts lose their potency. The detached individual sees each approach for what it truly is, a strategy, a ploy, a reflection of another's desires and fears. By maintaining composure, he transforms potential traps into opportunities. Every act of deception aimed at him can instead be absorbed, analyzed, and used against the deceiver. There is also a subtle artistry to detachment. Those who are mastered by emotion are transparent. They reveal their intentions, their desires, their anxieties. The detached man, in contrast, conceals the workings of his mind, revealing only what serves his purpose. His silence is a signal of strength, his composure a mask of omniscience. Allies respect him, enemies fear him, and the world bends to the measured force of his calculation. Machiavelli understood that appearances are as critical as action itself, and that detachment allows one to craft both with deliberate control. Yet detachment is not a natural state for most. It requires observation, practice, and a willingness to place reason above impulse. It demands that one acknowledge emotion but never let it dictate behavior. It requires the courage to act without the reassurance of approval, the discipline to resist provocation, and the patience to wait while others rush blindly toward their own undoing. This is the secret to mental dominance. The world acts under the tyranny of feeling, while you act under the sovereignty of thought. In this, power is not taken by force, but claimed through mastery of self, through the deliberate refusal to surrender to the chaos that rules ordinary minds. Detachment also allows the mind to anticipate with precision. When unclouded by anger, envy, or desire, one can see the sequence of actions as they unfold, recognize patterns invisible to the impassioned, and intervene at the exact moment that ensures success. Every rash gesture by others becomes a lesson, every mistake a foothold. While others flounder, the detached act with economy and purpose. Machiavelli teaches that those who cannot command their own hearts are forever enslaved to the whims of the world, but those who can remain aloof, unshaken, and strategically poised command the currents of fate itself. In the theater of human interaction, few illusions are as dangerous as the belief in unwavering loyalty or inherent trustworthiness. Men are not born with constancy, their hearts bend to circumstance, opportunity, and desire. Machiavelli warns that to rely upon the goodwill or fidelity of another without scrutiny is to walk blindly into a trap of one's own making. Trust is a fragile currency, and emotion is its counterfeit. Those who act on sentiment alone will discover too late that the world obeys neither ideals nor virtue. It obeys the clever, the observant, and the unshaken. Every man carries within him the potential for betrayal. Friends, allies, even those closest to us, are capable of decisions guided by self-interest, fear, or passion. The heart is a volatile instrument. Its impulses shift like wind, its desires are unpredictable, and its attachments are often conditional. Those who are guided by emotion are easy to deceive, for they assume constancy in a world where constancy is rare. Machiavelli understood that a mind clouded by trust, by sentiment, or by unexamined loyalty becomes a tool in the hands of others, manipulated without awareness, their decisions no longer their own, but the outcome of forces they fail to recognize. Observe the ambitious and the deceitful. They recognize this human weakness and exploit it with precision. A smile, a pledge, a show of loyalty. These are not merely gestures, they are instruments of influence, designed to bend the will of the trusting. The clever see the patterns in human desire and use them to advance their own objectives. They appeal to honor, friendship, and sympathy, all the while knowing that these very emotions will lead their target to error. The unsuspecting, who believes in the constancy of affection or allegiance, walks willingly into compromise, into schemes that were never meant to benefit them. Trust, when unexamined, is a weapon turned against its wielder. A leader who relies on the devotion of followers without scrutiny invites dissent cloaked in submission. A general who trusts his officers blindly risks disaster, for ambition and fear often outweigh loyalty in the crucible of conflict. Machiavelli teaches that trust is never given freely. It is earned, observed, and tested through vigilance and strategy. To assume constancy in others is to hand them the advantage, to place one's fate in the hands of forces beyond control. Emotional manipulation is pervasive, subtle, and devastatingly effective. Those who understand human psychology wield it like a blade, cutting through resistance with the precision of reason disguised as feeling. Flattery, feigned concern, the appeal to compassion or pride, these are tools that ensnare the unwary. While one is distracted by the display of sentiment, decisions are being guided away from rational consideration and toward the desires of another. Machiavelli recognized that the weak mind is drawn irresistibly toward these signals, acting not out of its own calculation but in response to the provocations of those who see its weaknesses. To resist manipulation requires the cultivation of mental detachment, but also the perception to recognize its forms. The wise learn to observe intentions hidden beneath appearances, to measure actions against reality rather than promise, and to interpret gestures not by emotion, but by the patterns of ambition and self-interest that govern human behavior. Every word of loyalty may conceal betrayal. Every act of friendship may carry an ulterior motive. The detached mind reads beneath the surface, sees the currents beneath the calm, and acts not as the victim of appearance, but as the master of interpretation. This is not to advocate paranoia, nor to dismiss the utility of alliances. Rather, it is to insist upon clarity, discipline, and calculation. Emotional attachment must never dictate action. Compassion must be balanced with strategy. Friendship must be weighed against the shifting motives of the human heart. Those who fail to do so are undone not by the overt force of their enemies, but by the subtle manipulations of those they trusted, whose intentions were guided by desire, fear, or the pursuit of advantage. Machiavelli understood that to navigate the complexities of human interaction, one must treat every pledge of loyalty, every smile of favor, every tear of regret, as data to be analyzed rather than truth to be accepted. The world is ruled not by the virtuous, nor by those who act out of moral certainty, but by those who perceive, calculate, and act with clarity. To place trust in another without observation is to surrender an invisible but powerful weapon into their hands, the weapon of influence over your decisions. Emotional manipulation thrives on this surrender, exploiting it to guide behavior, to provoke errors, and to secure advantage. The clever, the disciplined, and the detached turn these same dynamics to their favor, allowing others to act emotionally while they remain strategically poised. Even in intimate relationships, in dealings with friends, colleagues, or advisors, the patterns are identical. The unexamined trust of one individual becomes the leverage of another. Flaws in judgment, moments of compassion, or impulses of generosity are observed and acted upon, by those who recognize human susceptibility. The wise man, however, acts as both shield and mirror. He observes the intentions of others, acknowledges the temptations of their hearts, and ensures that no gesture of trust or loyalty compromises his own strategy. By doing so, he transforms the illusion of trust from a peril into an advantage, using it to anticipate action, predict reaction, and maintain the upper hand in every interaction. Machiavelli's insight is profound. The emotional bonds that humans cherish are often weapons in disguise. To surrender to them blindly is to invite manipulation. To resist, observe, and act from reason is to achieve a position of dominance in which others' emotional turbulence serves as guidance rather than threat. Those who rely on trust without calculation will inevitably find themselves outmaneuvered. Those who perceive the underlying currents, who recognize manipulation for what it is, and who act with detached precision, turn the game itself into a reflection of their will. In the realm of power, appearances are not trivial. They are weapons, shields, and signals all at once. Machiavelli understood that the mind alone cannot dominate unless the self is presented with careful intention. The man who reveals too much, who allows emotion to betray his thoughts, who acts with unfiltered honesty, exposes himself to manipulation, to judgment, and ultimately to defeat. To cultivate a calculated persona is to craft the very instrument through which the mind wields influence over the world. It is the art of being seen in ways that advance strategy while concealing the true workings of thought beneath a mask of composure. A calculated persona does not imply deceit for its own sake. It does not call for constant falsehood or perfidy. Rather, it is the deliberate presentation of oneself in a manner that maximizes advantage and minimizes vulnerability. Machiavelli observed that humans instinctively read emotion, posture, and expression. A leader who is visibly anxious, angry, or desiring will be understood far more easily than one who conceals intention. By controlling the outward display, the mind secures a degree of unpredictability that becomes a form of power in itself. To cultivate such a persona, one must first understand the interplay between perception and reality. People rarely act on truth. They act on what they believe. To command them, to influence them, is to guide their perceptions. The calculated man recognizes that every gesture, every word, every glance carries meaning beyond its immediate context. A measured silence can suggest contemplation or disapproval. A subtle smile can disarm suspicion or inspire trust. The world interprets these signals eagerly, often revealing its own desires and weaknesses in the process. By presenting a controlled exterior, one directs the interpretation, shaping the narrative in which others operate. Consider the use of fear and respect. Machiavelli famously advised rulers to be feared rather than loved when forced to choose, not because cruelty is inherently valuable, but because the appearance of power governs human behavior more reliably than emotion. A persona that commands respect, tempered with an element of caution, is a force multiplier. It deters opportunistic action by others and signals that the individual is not easily swayed by anger, charm, or flattery. At the same time, the calculated persona must avoid overt tyranny. It must inspire enough admiration or dependence that the mind retains allies even as it maintains control. Balance, subtlety, and perception become instruments of strategy in the shaping of public and private identity. The art of masking intention is central to this cultivation. Human beings naturally seek transparency. We wish to understand motives, to read intentions, to anticipate action. But the master of the calculated persona offers no such clarity. He reveals only what serves him, conceals what does not, and allows interpretation to operate within the boundaries of his design. By controlling visibility, he ensures that others cannot manipulate his choices through emotional provocation or assumed understanding. Every encounter becomes an exercise in influence. The world acts emotionally, while he acts strategically. Yet, the calculated persona is not a shield alone. It is also a tool for reading others. The careful observer disciplined in appearance and expression, gains insight into the emotional state, intention, and character of those around him. By maintaining composure, he invites others to reveal themselves, often unwittingly. A flustered adversary, an overeager ally, or a hasty subordinate exposes more than they intend. The contrast between their volatility and his calm becomes a lens through which he perceives opportunity, weakness, and potential leverage. In this way, the persona is both armor and instrument, protecting the mind while enabling dominance. Machiavelli understood that in social, political, and even intimate spheres, the revelation of emotion is a vulnerability. Those who display anger, desire, or excessive enthusiasm are readable, predictable, and therefore exploitable. By cultivating a persona that is measured, inscrutable, and deliberate, one secures the capacity to act decisively while others flounder under the weight of their own unrestrained feelings. Composure, control, and strategic ambiguity become hallmarks of power, a silent signal that the mind behind the mask cannot be moved, provoked, or coerced. Even charm and warmth are tools in the creation of a calculated persona. The master uses emotion sparingly, not as a guide but as a lever. To appear human enough to be trusted, approachable, and respected, while remaining aloof enough to remain unpredictable, is the essence of strategic identity. People must be allowed to see a reflection of themselves in the persona, to believe they understand it, while the true mind observes, calculates, and controls the flow of influence. In this careful choreography, every action and reaction is purposeful, every display of feeling calibrated, and every concealment intentional. The cultivated persona also ensures resilience against manipulation. Those who are transparent, who wear their hearts openly, invite the strategies of the clever. The one who is calculated cannot be moved by false flattery, feigned friendship, or emotional provocation. By presenting a consistent exterior of composed control, he forces others to act first, to reveal their motives, and to expose the weaknesses that he alone can exploit. In this, the persona is a masterful instrument of foresight, a lens through which opportunity is revealed and advantage is secured. Ultimately, cultivating a calculated persona is not mere performance. It is an extension of disciplined thought. It is the embodiment of mental dominance, a reflection of the principle that mastery over one's own appearance, expression, and revelation is inseparable from mastery over circumstance itself. Those who act without such calculation are vulnerable, readable, and easily manipulated. Those who embrace it command the currents of perception, bending human behavior to the strategic design of their mind, shaping the world around them as an extension of their own calculated will. The truth, stark and unwavering, is this: the world bows not to the emotional, the impulsive, or the sentimental. It bends to those who command themselves. Every failure, every misstep, every moment of defeat can be traced to one cause: the surrender of reason to feeling. Anger, fear, desire, hope. These are the chains that bind the unwary, the snares that allow others to dictate their fate. To recognize them is the first step. To master them is the path to dominance. Those who act with clarity, detached from the storms of passion, hold an advantage that no army, no fortune, and no charm can replicate. Mental dominance begins where emotion ends. The man who observes without succumbing, who calculates while others stumble, becomes a force invisible yet unstoppable. He sees the patterns in human weakness, the impulses that guide action, and the subtle deceptions that govern loyalty and friendship. While others act out of trust, attachment, or desire, he moves with purpose, shaping events rather than being shaped by them. To wield true power, one must also shape the self as carefully as one shapes strategy. Every expression, every gesture, every moment of appearance is an instrument. By cultivating a calculated persona, one becomes both shield and blade, resilient against manipulation, precise in execution, and inscrutable to those who would probe for weakness. The mind that dominates itself dominates perception, and the one who controls perception influences the world. Machiavelli's secret, often obscured by the noise of virtue and morality, is simple yet profound. Emotion is a trap, and the mind that avoids it, that masters it, that leverages it as both signal and shield, becomes untouchable. The untrained surrender to feeling, floundering in chaos, while the disciplined act with deliberate calculation, silent observation, and inevitable precision. The path is not easy, nor is it natural, but it is the path to supremacy, mental, social, and political. The wise take these lessons and internalize them, transforming themselves into forces of thought that the world cannot sway. They move unseen, strike where opportunity arises, and shape outcomes not through brute force, but through foresight, composure, and unassailable control. They are not ruled by circumstance, they rule it. They are not victims of human folly, they exploit it. And in the quiet mastery of mind, the ultimate truth is revealed. Those who conquer themselves conquer the world. For all else, power, influence, legacy, flows inevitably from the sovereignty of the mind.